Hey, everybody, and welcome to Nashville to Destin Real Estate Connection. I'm Erik Thornton, and I am joined by someone who has become a very good friend of mine, Nathan Abbott, down on the Emerald Coast. Hey, Nathan, thanks for jumping.
Thanks for having me today.
Thrilled to have you here, man. Why don't you tell people just a little bit about yourself, and even jump into maybe how our connection was formed here?
For sure. Yeah. So I'm a native to the Destin, Florida real estate market. I was born and raised here. My grandfather actually moved here in the early 60s and managed the only building in three counties with an elevator. He retired through Eglin Air Force Base, or retired in Air Force and retired here down in Eglin. We are initially a military town. And he started managing a condominium project called the El Matador. And like I mentioned, it was the only building in three counties with an elevator. So a lot of change happened. My father and my uncle moved here shortly after, and then they launched a company called Abbott Realty Services. We managed close to 3,000 rental properties over time. They were the only two people in real estate practically in our marketplace. And their dream was that one day it'd become a world-class vacation destination. At a time that there was nothing here, it was literally fishing and hunting land. If anyone ever seen the movie Lord of the Flies, it was like that. I was, as a child, we'd explored a Destin, and it was like to find your way of exploration. So a lot of changes
A
I've
little different
seen.
now.
Yeah, it's very different. It is a world-class vacation destination. They sold their company in '98, and then I started real estate in 2001. So I've been here. I've been around it my entire lifetime, but I've been in the business myself since '01.
So they were in vacation rentals before vacation rentals were cool, like everybody knows them today. They're
Yeah,
pioneers.
they people were really confused because they didn't understand that other people were actually owning the properties that our family was managing. They thought that we were the hotel, and they never saw the struggle as we typically see in real estate sometimes, that they just think that we just make all this money and we don't
Sure.
have struggle. I was able to see both sides, and I was able to build a career around the fact that I just what I loved is that you had the opportunity to really connect with people and have great longevity and relationships with people, and that's what I was really striving for. And like with you, Erik, like we would have never met if it wasn't through real estate, right? You're in Nashville. I'm in the Destin 30A market, Panama City Beach. We met through a mutual friend through the brokers that were at EXP. So
Yeah.
I think you can build a ton of relationship that's not just for customers you're serving, but for local business owners, for other real estate agents, the people, that are in this profession around the globe. So I'm very
Yeah.
happy at
Shout
the
out to our
profession
mutual
I
friend, Lauren
chose.
Rocco, for helping to make that happen, and EXP, I guess, for the
Yep.
kind of the spirit
Shout
of
out to
collaboration here.
Lauren Rocco, a great friend of both of ours.
Yes. Well, hey, I think it's really cool the story that you just shared, because even before Lauren's introduction for us, I think I shared with you that my family actually had ties to Abbott Resorts. Well,
Oh,
we stayed
wow. I didn't realize
in an
that.
Abbott Resort property, and I apologize if I haven't shared it with you. But for anybody listening, it's kind of cool to come full circle here, because the very first time my family took me to Destin when I was less than 10 years old, probably 8 years old or so, we stayed at an Abbott Resort property, at least the
Awesome.
way that I remember it. And more accurately, the what my dad has called it every year we've driven by the location of that property that we've continued to go down to the Emerald Coast. So I was hearing Abbott Resorts, Abbott, Abbott, Abbott for years every time we visited, long before I ever met you. So it's really cool here to make the connection to you and your family.
Yeah, a lot of people say, how'd y'all do that? I said, they had a vision, and they were literally the only two realtors in the entire town. And you didn't have the power of the internet. So how did the investor find the property? They had to call the person, and because they were the on-site management company, it created the sales, and they were the ones that had the details and the knowledge because they were the ones on site. So it was just perfect timing of having a vision for an area before a lot of people had that vision, and then just showing up and practicing every day to build that out, and then we sold to Resort Quest, and then it sold to Wyndham. But yeah, I built up. I'm third generation within my family, so that's all I've ever known was real estate.
You were sharing a really cool story with me last time I was down there, when we were sitting at Stock and Brew, about your first, whenever you stepped foot into the real estate industry, when you were working with your dad, and kind of how seriously you all took getting familiar with the properties, with the different resorts, with the different condominium buildings that were down there. Would you share just a little bit about what that journey has been like for you, just to, one, understand a bit of a moving target because there has been so much growth down there. Just talk a little bit about what that journey's been like for you to get to the point now where you're the CEO and what co-owner of the Abbott Martin Group.
Yeah, I think, we all think that in the beginning, I think when people are trying to get into real estate, they have a little chip on their shoulder that man, I'm in real estate, I can make this easy money, and I'm gonna, I know this marketplace, and I was trapped a little bit of that. Even though I saw the struggle a lot, I was like, I'm a native to the area, so therefore I already know this marketplace. Oh, and by the way, I've been in a real estate family, so I know. I did not know a damn thing, and my father, he was always pushed me a lot. What I appreciate about him, there was never a handout. I was like, make your own and figure it out. And so he quizzed me and he said, hey, how's your property knowledge? I'm like, oh, Dad, it's pretty good. I was waiting tables at the time. I was like, oh, yeah, it's pretty good. Well, what I knew about my property knowledge is the place I used to ride my bicycle to as a teenager to go meet girls on the beach. And so he's like, well, what area do you know the most? And I said, man, Okaloosa Island on Fort Walton Beach. I know that area like the back of my hand. And he says, well, great, let's go take a drive. And we get in the car, we drive down to Okaloosa Island. He starts asking me questions about these different condos and resorts and whatever. And after we were done with that, he says, well, son, I think you need to go ahead and pay more attention to your restaurant career because you're surely not taking the steps to become a real estate agent.
Ouch.
And I think we get trapped sometimes to think we are actually taking the time to learn the market, but we're just pretending to know it. And from that time on, it was like, it almost made me like a competition. Like, well, he said, how long do you need before we can do this again? I said, give me 2 weeks. And for 2 weeks, I literally got in my car and I lived on Okaloosa Island. I walked into buildings. I met HOA people. I started looking online of what the floor plans were. I started finding an MLS, what was available. And we went back 2 weeks later and we did the same. I think it was even like a month later. And he was like, man, you really took that to heart what I said. I said, well, you challenged me. I realized I do want to make a career in this. And I've never stopped having that mentality. I mean, like, knowledge is power. And I want to see the new projects. I want to feel the project. And, property knowledge is the piece that you can always be learning, even when you don't have a customer. And I think so often agents wait till they get the customer to try to learn the product which is the cart in front of the horse, versus taking the time to learn the product so that you become knowledgeable and build value for the people that you're serving.
I think you're spot on. And I had a lot of respect, obviously, for what you had built and what your family had built in the Destin area before we even really started to sit down and have conversations. But that story shed so much light on how seriously y'all take that. And not just you, but your team. And I just had the good fortune of sitting in on a call that you coordinated for the agents of Northwest Florida. And it was a great call. And you were just demonstrating so much value and the thought that you put into the conversations that you have with buyers and sellers and trying to position agents on your team and even beyond your team in the best position possible to serve those buyers. And your business now has become, you're helping buyers, sellers, investors. I know you're not just kind of back with traditional real estate, but you're also working in the development area of things out there now. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that evolution, how you've gotten involved in that?
Yeah, so my business partner, TJ Martin, has a lot of background in new home construction. I had a lot of background in launching some of the pre-construction markets of condominium high-rise. My wife and I were in charge of several buildings exclusively, and I learned a lot about that. The company that I was at, that our family sold to at the time, they were launching most of the pre-construction stuff. So there's a whole different perspective of real estate sales when it's being started from the ground up, from land acquisition to design to pre-sales to the end result. So sorry, I'm not sure if my computer's made a noise, but a lot of that was just understanding the process and realizing that development, it's a completely different side of the business. I'm not personally a developer, but we have created an environment to launch development opportunities. And I think a lot of times in development, brokerages use it as a training ground for new agents where we build out the team specifically for that project from beginning to end. And through those relationships of finding the land acquisition, to building the teams to what's on the horizon and to navigate through shifts in markets. We have about 1,500 new builds that will be coming to the market from Pensacola to Panama City Beach over the next 3 years. And, developers, just like sellers and whatever, you have to be aware of the environment, the market, and what the consumer is looking for. There's just a lot bigger thought process than an individual home. It's a volume of properties being sold. And so we feel very fortunate to be in that role. A lot of it came down through the knowledge that we built on the ground of just finding opportunities for people.
Sure. That's amazing. Congratulations on the evolution of that and the success that you're having.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about the, so whether it's a new construction or whether someone's looking at a resale of a property, the things that I'm carving out here in Nashville is helping folks buy second homes, helping people buy investment properties along the Emerald Coast, especially Destin and 30A. And that's definitely within the span from PCB to Pensacola that you're covering. So I imagine that's something you have a lot of experience with, or people shopping for short-term rentals, or many call them Airbnbs, right, generically. But when someone is looking at either a second home or an investment property, because there is a difference there,
Yes.
what process or what advice do you usually give someone who's looking at that for the first time?
Number one, I think, is understanding what type of risks you can and can't take. I've heard people that are trying to get in their first investment property and they're like, I can make this work if the rentals do this. I think that's a very risky play, right? Like, one of the things that I was always guided in is do not buy a second home or an investment rental property unless you can afford the payments for a minimum of 5 years with zero rental income. Because I think people got stuck in that trap, and you're starting to see that a little bit now that everyone during COVID, they had to get their rental property. They didn't really research the process. They didn't, some of them didn't have the holding power. Things can happen. Markets can shift a little bit. And, that's a start, building the right finances in place, that even if you're leveraging other people's money through lending, that you have the ability to cover the payment with zero rental income. So that's the first thing I ask. What's a monthly payment that you'd feel comfortable with? You never know if there's a natural disaster or whatever happens. Do you have longevity in that space? And I've had some people say, well, no, man, if it doesn't rent for this, I can't make that work. And I said, well, what's the motivation to try to get a property down here? Well, my family likes to come there. I want a place at the beach. And I was like, well, let's work together to make that happen for you. But maybe there's some steps that you can work towards that reserve that minimizes the risk. And I've had people come back 4 or 5 years later say, we sold a couple properties. We did this, we did that. And, we do have the holding power now. And they thanked me that I wasn't just trying to rush them on the sale. They came back at a time that they feel comfortable. And now once you have longevity, it's a great opportunity for them. And what's funny is most people that buy investment properties, the worst deal that they made is typically when they sell the property, because they look down at a longer period of time. Maybe it's 10 years down the road and like, man, I should have sold that property. I got to experience that with our own family, right? We invested, my father and my uncle invested in a lot of real estate over the years in their career. And everything that they sold, no matter what the markets are grossly higher today. And every low on 10-year cycles have been higher than the previous low. So real estate's been a long-term investment. I think people have looked at it too much as a short-term flip. And sometimes you can nail it perfectly, but you got to have longevity in order to minimize risk, in my opinion. That's the number one thing.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, very practical. And then when it does come time for someone to look at what an STR is, a short-term rental, is capable of generating revenue-wise, what are some of the tools that you and your team use to help buyers explore that?
So we can do a cost to own, kind of a net sheet from there, where we break down the expenses before the rental income, right? This is what it's going to look like on an annual basis with zero rental income. Would that payment be comfortable to you? Yeah, that is. Well, here's the beauty of it. You're not paying that all yourself. So let's now take in what the gross rental income is for that property, of how it can offset that. You already mentioned you can afford the payment with zero rental income. Doesn't mean that you may not be paying out per month. Sometimes you can find stuff that cash flows, but usually if you have a lender involved, you are going to have and, a comfortability of making some monthly payments, right? But you got to look at what the write-offs are for having that short-term rental property, the tax shelter that it has, the memories that you can create there with your family. Most people that are buying properties down here, it's because they like being here. And then just breaking down the numbers from there and say, if you have the holding power, what we've typically have seen is that over 10-year cycles, if you can look at all the highs and lows in real estate, because real estate market, if you look at it, it goes like this. But over 10-year cycles, our market's always averaged anywhere from a 5 to 8% return on investment. So if you hold a property for 10 years, not to say that you have to hold it for 10 years, but if you have to hold it for 10 years, you're probably going to make about a 50 to 80% return on your money. I'm living proof of what that looks like. I bought an investment property in 2006, right before the market crashed, 800,000. It was a pre-construction building. It went to close in 2008, and that same unit I paid 800,000 for was worth 475,000. I had a $120,000 non-refundable deposit, and we lost about 35% of the building that did not have the ability to close and to cover the payment. My dad taught me a long time period ago you shouldn't be buying that property if you couldn't afford it. And so when I didn't want to lose 120 grand because I knew if I lost that, there'd be no way to recover that. And I still really loved the property and loved the unit. So I closed. And it was very difficult in the beginning because we had to do a developer closeout auction, and we sold out all the remaining inventory almost at half price. They all closed in we sold it out in 3 hours, and everyone's celebrating. Yeah, I got the deal of the century. And I'm sitting there like, man, I just went through listing this entire project, working religiously on it for 3 years. And then to have that much loss in my unit, it was really kind of took my legs out from underneath me.
Yeah.
Over a 10-year cycle, even after the biggest drop in U.S. history, which I think our market is very different today from that, the biggest drop in U.S. history, over a 10-year cycle, I still made money and equity on that property. While I rented it out, while other people helped me pay down my mortgage, now there's zero mortgage and the property's worth $1.2 million, right? So it just goes to show, even after the biggest drop in U.S. history as a long-term hold, there was still great equity in that specific property.
Yeah. And it's probably tough. I mean, I guess you could go back and do the math, but it's tough to quantify the tax benefits, all the kind of the ancillary things that people don't really think about as much outside of just the revenue, the cash flow numbers, the sexy part of it, right? So you've gotten to that benefit all in that time period too. So that's amazing. You mentioned the net sheet that you can help someone, like the operating costs that you can help someone evaluate. What are some of the costs that people are oftentimes surprised by, whether it's something they didn't think of or how much it can be to operate or to manage a property, from afar?
Typically, when you look at gross rental income, you're going to take home about 50% of that, right? Once you throw in management, taxes, miscellaneous, HOA fees, utilities, when you look at an HOA fee, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I want something with a low HOA fee. You don't want to look at that because that means they have low fees to maintain the building. And just like in your personal home, right? Like it's smaller fees, but when you add them all together, it's actually typically more than the HOA fee, because the HOA fee, it covers maintenance of the building, covers all your amenities in the building, covers the bookkeeping in the building. It usually covers all your utilities except for electric. So your internet, cable, water, sewer, trash. It also covers all exterior insurance of the building. And it covers a reserve towards the building if they're managing it right. So where you're seeing condos that have a struggle is where they weren't building any reserve. They didn't have right management maintenance fees for that. And then the building has deteriorated some over time. So I ask people, hey, what are you paying at home after you pay your pool cleaning bill, all your utilities, your maintenance? You need to do some repairs. Oh, all your insurance, all those things. What does that add up to? It's usually as much, if not more than HOA fee. HOA fees just group it all together. So, but when you plug all those things in your net sheet, out of all the evaluations that I've done, it usually averages out to about 50% of that. That's actually going to go towards your mortgage or go back in your pocket. So it's doing $60,000 a year. You're probably going to take about 30,000 of that. That's going to be cash to go towards your mortgage or back into your pocket. and any expenses against your revenue are a write-off. So you're getting tax advantages from that as well. And a lot of people are getting savvy and managing it themselves. Managing properties run between 18 to 25% typically of your gross rental income. Typically, the housekeeping fee is being paid from the customer that's renting your property. There's a housekeeping fee. But when you look at gross rental, those fees are all combined into it. So like once you take out the housekeeping fee, even though the tenant is paying for it, it's still being added to the gross rental. And so that chisels off. And once you chisel all those things off, you're averaging about a 50% take home. If you manage it yourself, you're going to save about 18 to 25%. And the unique part is the people that are really good at managing themselves, they're going to pull in more rental income typically than any rental management company because their only focus is on their property. But you got to treat it like a business. And I've seen other people say, yeah, I'm just going to rent it myself. You don't do it right. You really need to have a great housekeeper, a great maintenance person. You got to have business awareness. You got to reach out for customer reviews. You want to make sure that you got a great customer service, because if you don't treat it like a business, it can also become a very big headache for you, and people start having a bad experience and they never come back to your property. So if you're not prepared to treat it like that, you need to make sure you interview multiple rental companies. We can provide some great insight on that. And but if someone's wanting to rent it themselves, we can also help you build a housekeeping staff, and as well as a good maintenance person that could be
I
on
think that's
call.
great advice. I can't count how many times I've had that conversation, because people are just naturally curious about, hey, how much can these properties, bring in? And that 18 to 25%, can add up, or I guess take away from your revenue, or you take home pretty
They have
quickly.
what's
So
called bed tax dollars, so you got to make sure you're doing the regulations well from a taxation standpoint, and you want to make sure you have a CPA or someone that understands how to do that. Because trust me, if you're not paying those, if you don't know how to process the fees right with the county that you're in, then next thing you know, you're delinquent on taxes and stuff like that. So you just want to make sure that you take the time to understand all the pieces that are needed before just jumping in blindly to manage a property on your own. And I found a lot of times people may start with a rental management company, they get a good understanding of it, and then they say, hey, I want to do this on my own. And I've seen people thrive in that. I've seen other people go from rental management company to do it on their own to say, hey, man, it's worth the 18%,
turn it back over.
20%. I'm going right back to the rental management company, right? So if you have a good company, they earn their value by making it a seamless process that you're not the one getting the calls and making the appointments and
Sure.
coordinating maintenance and housekeeping. There's a lot that goes to managing a property properly.
So help people reconcile a little bit, because I think that the COVID effect had, definitely a big impact on people's perception of how good of an investment an STR could be. But a lot of those numbers, if I'm understanding correctly, would you agree that they were artificially inflated, at least for that time being, because of the increased demand and the COVID effect?
Well, I tell everybody, when in your lifetime was Florida one of the only vacation destinations open in the entire world, right?
Yeah.
So, yes, it was out of control. In fact, it was too crowded. Like as locals, we try to go out and about. There's so many people here. It actually took away from the environment. I think the post-COVID thing is taking some time to adjust from. I think you got a lot of sellers too that have this mindset that was never going to end. We've already seen correction in our marketplace from a purchase standpoint. Our peak was around June or July of 22. If you look at the kind of the curve of our market, it was at its peak. It's already adjusted down, and sellers are being more negotiable. So I honestly believe that right now is a really great time to buy a short-term rental property, because also the COVID effect is we're going to pay above appraisal price. I don't even need the inspection. There was multiple offers on everything. Our inventory was pretty much non-existent. So you had a lot of people just jumping into property because they had to have it. And a lot of them were buying it as like an escape property from a lockdown state to say, oh man, like if nothing else changes, at least I got my place down there. And so, yeah, the rental numbers have came down probably about 30% from where they were at COVID. But the price points of a lot of the properties have also came down. So it's all reflective with that. And again, it's the long-term hold. I think if someone bought a property at the peak of 22, if they're going to go sell that property today, they're going to have to sell it at a loss. But if they hold it for 6, 7, 10 years, I think they're probably going to make some great return on investment. So yeah, there's definitely some shifts. It was something that we've never experienced in our lifetime. Hope that we don't experience chaos like that again.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be something else down the road, but one of the things that's really helped our area, in my opinion, is that we're a drive-in destination in addition to a fly-in destination. So when you have economy drops a little bit, hey, let's save money on the plane tickets. Let's drive to the Emerald Coast, right? Get 9/11. Let's not fly. Let's drive to the Emerald Coast. COVID, flying is scary. Let's drive to the Emerald Coast. And that's the one thing that really helped Abbott Realty survive through adversity, is because we were a drive-in destination. We're the number 2 drive-in destination in the state of Florida outside of Orlando because of Disney World. But Orlando has no beach in Orlando. And there's a lot of great things about Orlando. That's another good short-term rental property. But I think what people fall in love with down here is they see our white sand beaches that, in my opinion, are the most beautiful beaches of anywhere in the world. It's made out of grounded quartz crystal. And those are the customers that I love serving the most. Like, man, like, I never even knew a place existed like this. Or, man, our family's been coming here for years. Like you were talking with your family, Eric, and you were at the time in our lives that we really want a property down there. And I think it's when you can connect those two pieces together versus, hey, I'm just an investor, I'm never going to stay there. It's not as fun of experience of someone that just like fell in love with this market, this area, and now they got their property that they can start building memories with their family.
That's one of the things that I really admire about you is your affinity for the area that you grew up in. It's still your home today. You take so much pride in it, and you are a great advocate for it. I mean, your stories are always highlighting. You're coming back from somewhere, and I know you go a lot of cool places, but you're always happy to come home. You always have that appreciation, just an outside perspective. But tell us a little bit about having that perspective, growing up there all your life. It is your home. What are you excited about, coming down the pike along the Emerald Coast?
I think one of the things I think is going to make our market very healthy long term is that we've always been really just a vacation destination alone. Right? And um, when you're living here and everything's only about tourism, you kind of miss some things from an infrastructure standpoint of full-time living. During COVID, what happened is a lot of people came down here to escape. They fell in love with the area. And I had so many people say, man, I have not experienced a place that felt so safe. Like I feel super safe. Man, I had my kids enrolled in your school during COVID and they love it. All of our public schools here, we have A-rated schools here, right? And yet a lot of these people that came down here on vacation and they stayed and they ended up creating a life down here. And so I love these stories of where you're seeing people that might not have ever heard of our area before from the Northwest, Northeast. I had people from California to, Seattle, Washington, D.C., Chicago, New York, New Jersey. We've usually been Southeast destination. We've been kind of Texas to Tennessee and kind of in between that could drive in, but we have direct flights now to Charlotte, Dallas, Houston, Nashville. Nashville's a huge feeder market now that grew a lot during COVID. Atlanta, those are our main places. But we're starting to see really great residential growth. I actually see our area over time becoming, maybe 60% vacation destination and 40% residential growth. And we're already seeing in our schools, we're going to have to start building more schools, right? Schools are getting to capacity. Our kids, we took out for homeschool the first year of COVID just because of the uncertainties of them shutting down the school and everything. My wife has a master's in education. And by the time we brought our kids back to school, there was about a 30% fallout of kids that went to homeschool. But during COVID, there was a 30% growth rate of children in the schools. And they have built some new schools since then. So when you start seeing residential growth, you start seeing better infrastructure. You're already seeing new roads going in, new shopping going in, new restaurants going in, they're doing an amphitheater that they're doing here. They're working on a sporting complex. There's a lot of things coming to the Panama City Beach market. And when you start seeing commercial growth on that level, it really allows you to believe in what the future holds. And we came from like a kind of an untapped Southeast destination to people knowing about this area globally. And in fact, Wall Street Journal released an article a couple of years ago, and it says the Emerald Coast, which they call this area, is the new crown jewel of Florida. And so
Wow.
we're getting a lot of exposure on a high level now.
Glad to see it getting the recognition it deserves. I know there's a
Yes.
lot of people can look at that differently. You know, there's pros and cons to that, but I always say, don't you want to be in an area that people are flocking to and want to be to for one reason to another, as opposed to a place where nobody wants to be and they're trying
Want
to
to
get
live
out
in
of.
an area that people vacation to,
Yeah,
right? And I think that is the trend since COVID, right? Like technology, different things allows me to live in the place that I would typically vacation to. And it's almost like the city can be the place that we go to for vacation because I'm already living in the vacation spot. And so, and that's what you're saying. Like, when you travel, you're in a great spot when you go on an awesome vacation. And then you come back home and the sense of arrival is just like this calming effect that our market does to people. That you leave a vacation, you don't struggle coming home because when you come home, you're like, I'm back in even a better vacation and it's my home.
yeah.
And I
Not
think
back
a
to the
lot of,
grind. You're back to your home.
yes. And you
Yeah.
can't buy time, right? I think a lot of people are realizing that life is short and let's make that leap of faith. And now that we can move to a different destination and let's move to where we vacation to. And that's what you're starting to see a lot more of here.
Yeah. I love that. So without divulging too many, insider secrets, Nathan, I mean, as somebody who's super familiar with the area down there, obviously, what are some of your favorite spots? Let's do your favorite restaurant that's maybe off the beaten path a little bit that everybody doesn't necessarily flock to.
Well, and I have a lot. Everyone wants a good local restaurant spot. We I love the place called Vintage. It's in an area called Grand Boulevard. Todd Reber's the owner. He's been a local staple here for most of my lifetime, and it's just great. They offer three new specials for lunch every lunch day, and they do dinner as well. But it's all really fresh, locally grown. Fish and shrimp and kind of a variety. It's like almost like a Napa Valley style cafe. They have a lot of different variables to choose from. A really great environment. I also love just some of the best customer service you'll ever have. He really caters towards locals. Is Sushi Moto is a really awesome spot, and it's kind of funny. Like the best restaurants in our marketplace are the ones that are usually not on the tourist channel.
Yeah.
It's usually the locally owned, the ones that aren't, because they support a lot of their business on local connection because they support their business year round, not seasonally. And so when the tourists that are down here start hearing about these little local spots, that's how I connect people because it's like, hey, let me help guide you on your vacation. It doesn't even have to be about real estate sales. Let me give you a little agenda, some things that you can do that will make you live like a local while on vacation.
That's Vintage. Is that where did you and I meet there for
We had
lunch
lunch
maybe
there.
2 years
Yeah.
ago? Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the name of it, but the way you described it, I'm like, yeah, that's definitely the spot.
Yeah, it's good too, wasn't it?
It was a really cool spot. Let's do one more. How about a place for live music while people are down there? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, so we there's a place called North Beach Social. It's right
Love
off
North Beach
the
Social.
on the south side of 331 Bridge. That's a great venue. It's right on the bay, so it's a great place to bring kids as well because they have a big beach that the kids can play off. They always have live music on the weekends. Kind of an open air restaurant and bar there. Really good spot. You have over by Stinky's Fish Camp, which is kind of Jim Richard. He's also a huge native or long-term chef, has kind of that Cajun vibe to it. He has two establishments, Redfish Taco, and then right over by Stinky's, there's a music venue there. What's cool about our area is that there's these little pop-ups all over that have live music. We have a songwriters festival every year. They have Jazz Fest, and we're starting to see a lot more bigger concerts. Lauren Daigle's about to play down here. We have
Well,
um, JJ Gray and like a big kind of jazz funk group. They have the Seabreeze Jazz Festival. There's a big country music festival. So you're really starting to see a lot of it's in Panama City Beach too, that they're having these, big concerts down here. So some good live music kind of all over from the Jimmy Buffett reggae to kind of funk blues to some rock and roll. We're starting to see a better variety.
my in-laws were just raving about Stinky's fish camp when they were down there last time. I've driven by it a few times, but I haven't stopped. And I always try to get people to go to North Beach Social. I've got a friend
Yeah.
down there right now with kids, and I said there's room for the kids to run around. Awesome environment, but I think a lot of people pass on it because it's It's a bit of a drive, I guess, from Destin, but it is worth it. It's
Yeah,
a
and
cool spot to hang out.
it's right off at 331, so it's right on your feeder route coming into our marketplace,
Yeah.
right on the south side of 331 Bridge. Um, and then also, which to my understanding, they're bringing there's kind of a satellite Tootsie's down here tied to Nashville, and to my understanding, they're going to be opening up a Gulfront Tootsie's down here in a big establishment. So you're really starting to feel that Nashville vibe on the Emerald Coast. And what's happening is that these country music stars are visiting our beach because it's the best beach in the closest proximity of a 45-minute flight or a fairly easy drive. And then they're coming down here buying properties on our beach. And then it's like, I've always saw it's an entrepreneur's dream down here because there's a lot of stuff from cities and other places that you come down here because we're still small town America. It's like, man, if I bring this concept down to this marketplace, it could really thrive here. And so you're starting to see a better music influence than we've had in the past.
And that is why, my friend, we are the Nashville to Destin real estate connection.
100%. Yeah, and still some same Southern hospitality, right? You got the
Yeah.
same kind of vibe of dynamic. And yeah, so people are moving from California to Nashville. And then from Nashville, they're saying, man, where do you go to the beach? And they're coming to Destin and
I can't
38.
count how many times I've had that conversation. They're like, I keep hearing all about it. Half the town of Nashville leaves on spring break and fall break. I got to go figure out what this Emerald Coast thing is all about. I'm like, yes, you do. You have to go visit. And I'm probably missing a
The
couple.
best thing about living here is you get to stay when everybody else has to go.
Yeah. But what's that? So there's Tootsie's, there's Party Foul has made its way down there, Red Door, and
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm missing some. There might even
They're
be
about to
some
be
other-
opening up a Top Golf down here in Panama City Beach.
Yeah.
You got Dolly Parton that's doing this big, like, kind of Broadway type dinner theme deal down here. You got Tootsie's that's coming down here. I don't know if I mentioned yet, they just got approval to launch a big amphitheater here in Santa Rosa Beach.
That's
and
exciting.
so, yeah, you're starting to see you even got some stuff from, like some opera type stuff and some kind of classical music events that are happening. There's a pretty good variety down here to look through.
Well, the secret is out, to say the least. Nathan, I sure appreciate you jumping on here with us. Tell everybody where they could find you, follow you.
Yeah, so best way to follow me is through you, Eric, to be that Nashville connection. With me being licensed in both areas, I'm just Florida and Tennessee here to help just guide you and your customers have a great experience down here. We're Abbott Martin Group. It's ABBOTT martingroup.com. If you want to check out our website, we'd love to have you do that. And if you have a connection with Eric, go through Eric. Him and I are good friends, and then we can help build a good strategy for you down in our marketplace here on the Emerald Coast.
Look forward to helping as many people as possible.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, Nathan. We'll catch you next time. This is going to be a regular thing between Nathan and I. So if you all enjoyed this and found some value, especially Nathan's perspective on the Emerald Coast, you got plenty more to look forward to. So
yeah, we can
until
start
next time.
getting more property specific over time as well too. It kind of like maybe benchmark some great investment opportunities. And I'll end it with this. I told you about it. We have a 12-bedroom home. Really great price point compared to rental. Walk to the beach. It's in West 30A. There is a great cash flow opportunity there. So yeah, there's some really cool stuff that's coming out of the market that I think can really get your customers excited.
That's the one that I toured on Hilltop last
Yes.
time, right?
Yep.
Okay. I've told a couple of people about that. We'll continue to help spread the word.
And the price that we have it offered at right now
It's almost unreal.
Makes it a home run. I mean, a 12-bedroom home for $3 million that can generate north of 400 plus rental income a year. We have projections all the way up to $500,000. I always like to be conservative. Even if you're doing it $350 a year, the numbers work at that price point. So it's pretty unique. It's like a mini hotel. Walk to the beach.
Yeah, it's a beautiful property in great proximity to the beach too.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. All right, anybody who's interested, let me know. We can make the connection, help you look into that property more. And Nathan, until next time, thanks for joining.
Thanks. Look forward to hearing from you.